so therefore I'm not advocating that this is the answer, but I'll tell you what has happened here. But let me just quickly go through. This is probably modern India's oldest NGO. Modern India's oldest NGO. I'm not talking hundreds of thousands of years ago. They are more than 100 years old. So this is, as I said, oldest of the modern NGOs. So this was the patron saint who died, and then his disciple Vivekananda became famous in the United States, and then he set up this mission in 1897. So therefore we are talking about 130 odd years, roughly. So this is basically his message was this: the ignorant Indian, the poor and destitute Indian, the Brahmin India, the pariah Indian is my problem. Alright? And their mission is one's own liberation and for the welfare of the world at large. So look at this in the message. One's own liberation. So therefore, if you join this mission, you are doing two things. You're looking for helping others, but you also, there is something for yourself. Whether it happens or doesn't happen, nobody knows. People who become monks think that something happens to them. Whether it happens, we don't know. But therefore, their own, what I'm trying to tell you is, they resonate within themselves the spirit and the philosophy of the organization. That's possible, therefore, in a religious organization. There the succession is much easier to manage because everybody first has to be sieved through the raison d'etre and purpose of the whole thing. This is not true of other organizations. Very quickly, this is what they do. I'll just run through the course thing. So healthcare, disaster, rural management, tribal welfare, all of this. So you see these monks working with people, etc., distributing clothes, flood relief. Just see, this is an example in front of Belur Math as the main temple. See the number of monks seated. So obviously you do not have a leadership crisis. When the senior person dies, somebody else takes over. Like the Pope dies, somebody else becomes Pope. But this is not as old as the Catholic Church, 130 years. So 218 branch centers, 174 in India, 44 in other places. Alright? And this place where the NGO is located is one of the branch centers. So basically it was set up in Narendrapur and Sonarpur block in 1956. So this is again like Annapurna Mahila Mandal, this is now their reconstituted arm for Lokashiksha means education, vocational education. That means people are trained in different crafts and trades and they are then equipped to get employment and whatever. So that's how it started in 1956. So this is the building. So service to mankind is service to God. Again, starts with women, youth and child. So these are some of the themes they work on, very common to what you were seeing earlier. And see where they get their funds from. First of all, government in a big way. Look at the international agencies. Look at the national agencies. Why do they give? They don't only give because you're doing flood relief. Many of them are actually disciples of this order. They may be working in government, they may be working abroad, they're actually disciples of this order, so they have great goodwill, so they feel that I am doing something. It's like, people working in a company and feeling at one with the CSR activities of the company. So here they are disciples of Ramakrishna, so part of it is that. So there's enormous amount of goodwill for that across parties. For instance, the Ramakrishna Mission today gets funds from the West Bengal government and the central government. Those of you who are here from abroad, if you have sensed it or if you know it, our state government and the union government are always fighting. But that has not affected them. So when the Chief Minister comes to the same program, the Prime Minister comes to the same program, no problem, because it's the Ramakrishna Mission. So all of this, so look at this, so they've said here, difference from others as well. Acceptability at the grassroots level. They have trust. Companies trust them, governments trust them, NGOs trust them, beneficiaries trust them, because of their religious background. And therefore that builds the credibility. So this is one model. Obviously, this is not the answer for organizations like Annapurna Mahila Mandal, but they need to find an answer where you can find far easier answers to how to groom future leaders. Alright? Now let's go to the other aspect. So we talked about succession planning, but there is the other aspect of how to build structures. Yeah. So how to build the NGO organization? Let's talk some of the issues that you raised, but in a more generic form.
The last one.
Sorry?
This is the last one.
Yeah, what? Oh, why is the first slide not coming? No, this is not it. Here. Okay, anyway, leave it the way it is. Okay. Okay. So this is very quickly, I won't dwell on this, but we have made a comparison of for-profit and not-for-profit. So you can see how the mission is different. In one, it is growing market capitalization, and the other, it is delivering of service. They're completely two beneficiaries. One is financial performance, here it's balanced with other measures. But it's important to notice that in not-for-profit, they are not saying no financial performance. It's saying financial performance plus. CEO is sole boss here. Here CEO reports to a non-executive chair. So that's very interesting. In the board composition, typically in corporates and for-profits, the overall board is small. You have executive directors, you have a few non-executive directors, but it's a small board, all right? Here, it's a very large board. What's the role of a non-profit board? Yes?
I would say networking, advice, and just helping run the operation as efficient as possible.
Yes, also lobbying. You also need good names from community and society to give you that credibility to attract funds and resources, to gain acceptance among more key constituents, so all of that. Here, there is no operations committee, because obviously that's the whole company and its workforce. Here, you need an operations committee, because this is divorced from the actual working of the board. In a typical not-for-profit, how often do board members come? It's a large board, remember. How often would they come? Any idea? Typically in a not-for-profit, how often does a board meet?
Maybe once a year.
Once a year for the annual general meeting, definitely, because there you would pass the accounts and whatever, so you would get everybody. But usually there's a rule that you cannot meet only once a year, so twice, thrice, max 4 times. How often does a company's board meet? Every month for sure. Or if not every month, at least once in 2 months. Okay? So, what about board members? You have highly paid, they are long service, predictable roles and hours, profiles, senior business. Here it's sometimes even financial donors are part of it. They have diverse roles, high antisocial hours, high turnover. Sometimes they're even expected to donate. Now look at the social enterprise spectrum. So at the left is pure organizations that are purely philanthropic, and the right is purely commercial, and the ones that are in between. So anyway, this you can figure out. This types of NGOs, very quickly, we talked about it earlier, but let's remind you, there are 2 groups, operational, the ones that we have largely dealt with actually in this course. But there are also advocacy NGOs. Pure advocacy NGOs are like touchwood. They're very divorced from the other reality. They're just thinking of prisoner, 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 and that's it. So it's not as wholesome as an operational NGO. international NGOs have to mobilize resources in the form of financial donations, materials, volunteer labor in order to sustain. Advocacy will do the same thing but with a different balance, alright? But everybody needs to do fundraising, mobilization of work, organizing special events, cultivating media, administering headquarters. Okay, this is important. In India, for instance, and we can, because we are here, let's talk about India. How can an NGO be registered? These are three types. Traditionally, you had only one or two. The third one is a not-for-profit company. So typically, tell me what is the difference between the three? How is a trust different from a society, registered society? Indian guys, wake up, this is your country, your laws, you should know. Others also probably is not very dissimilar because we borrowed it from the English. No? Typically, a society has many more members than a trust. A trust can be as less as 3 people. A society would be typically many more people. Typically, in a trust, you would have elections to the body that runs it. So the members, let's say, vote once a year to appoint people to head it for the next year. The new committee is appointed. Whereas trust, it stays the same. So now when you talk of succession planning, in a society, the character may change, but it's in principle easier because every year, supposedly, you can theoretically get a new committee. Sometimes you may vote the same committee into the chair, but every year there are usually elections and appointments. Whereas in a trust, it's only when a trustee dies that you co-opt a new trustee. So, so therefore it's a choice as to how you want to run it. When it's a choice, when it's something that many people feel for, then obviously society is a good answer. When you want control very tightly held, then trust is a good answer. Correct. Why Section 25 company? Or why a not-for-profit company as opposed to trust a society? Why would that come up at all? No idea? Because Companies Act, it's governed by the Companies Act. Companies Act gives you far more flexibility in organizing yourselves. Alright? It is because it has moved from a for-profit concept and it's kind of just with a few things less, it becomes not-for-profit. So the flexibility, autonomy, ease of maneuvering is far more in not-for-profit companies than in a trust or society. I'll give you one example. We said raising finances is fundamental, right? We just said in the last slide also. How will the organization run? Where is a trust or society allowed to invest in India? Any idea? Allowed to invest. Land, post office, bank, full stop. You can buy land for expansion, or even if you want to just leave it, let it lie and it appreciates. Second is post office savings schemes and banks. Whereas these people, not-for-profit companies, can access mutual funds, shares of companies, debentures, many other things. So therefore, there is a lot more flexibility here. But this is new. How do you set up an NGO's bylaws? This is a quick checklist of what you need to do. Alright? So this is how you set it up. Alright. Now these are questions that are there. To whom are NGOs accountable? How do you ensure that NGOs are accountable? Companies are accountable to their stakeholders, shareholders at least. The shareholders can do whatever. NGOs are accountable First of all, if it's a registered society, it's accountable to its members. If it's a trust, it's tightly controlled, only 5 members. So accountability is much less, it's diffused. Alright, now these are how to improve governance, so you can look at it. So every NGO ideally should review its own performance. They should have these things, internal reviews, feedback from the people they serve. There should be program monitoring, and there should be periodic audit by donors. This is very important. This usually happens. People who give you money usually send third-party people to assess the work and to realize whether their money is actually being utilized in the most optimal way. As you would have seen from many people, website is a major issue because that's used to raise funds. So, this is the biggest thing. Facilitates donations, should be regularly updated, whatever. Alright. What about the delivery system of an NGO? First of all, it has smallness of scale. Usually an NGO is not like a corporate. Talk of IBM and you talk of any of the people you met here, very, very small. Very small, small in size. Extreme talent intensiveness. What does that mean? That means there are very few people and then few people with those kinds of talents, and if you have one person and he's kind of doing the whole thing. It's not like you have several finance people discussing finance, several marketing people discussing marketing. No. Whoever knows that thing is usually alone, other people are helping him out. Limited replicability. Usually it's very difficult to scale up NGOs. What you learn in one context may be very difficult to replicate in another context. This one is what we've been talking about, dependence usually on the founder or leader. Other thing is donor driven. Typically, how do NGOs fund themselves, let me tell you. One is they usually have corporate funds, corpus funds which come from donations. Alright? The other source of funds is internal generation, but the largest thing is donor driven. Now typically what happens, what in the Ramakrishna mission, and this is something they said, I could have shown you towards the end. In the Ramakrishna mission they say they do 2 or 3 kinds of programs. One program where the donor gives money, but they leave you to decide what to do about it. That means what to do with it. Second type is donor gives you money but for a specific cause, for a specific project, and they'll come and audit you. Third one is donor gives money for a specific cause, will audit you, but also will tell you where and how to spend. That means the authorization to spend remains with the donor, you become an executing agency. If you become an implementing agency, your autonomy of operation is severely limited and constrained. But usually that is where the maximum funds are. Maximum people who give the maximum funds control exactly how every penny or every euro or every rupee is spent. The more autonomy they give, it means that the other vulnerability is that usually these funds are for very limited time. Sometimes maybe 1 year. So after 1 year, if it stops, by the time you get the donor agency to give it again, 6 months have gone. Your beneficiary is there on the field. How will you serve that person? So then what do NGOs do? They have 6 different projects, and that gives you an answer why so many clusters in a parivar. So they'll take money from this project donor and use it for another project. Which means potentially what? You need to be a financial wizard to map it back to the original purpose. Imagine there are 6 projects they are doing because they need to run. So what do? 6 projects, government is giving money, or a Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is giving money, or a Clinton Foundation is giving money. So they take 2 from Clinton, 2 from Bill and Melinda Gates, 2 from the government. Let's say Bill and Melinda Gates hasn't renewed it next year, but you are still serving them. You're not sure whether it will come through. They'll use the Clinton Foundation money to fund Bill and Melinda Gates. Or government has not given it, which is more common. They are taking their own sweet time, change of government, elections, bureaucrat, transfer. They use the Clinton Foundation money to fund them. Somebody comes down from Clinton Foundation, where's my money, what's happening? Disappeared. Where? That other government project. You need to be a financial wizard to be able to protect the NGO from these kinds of issues. But it invariably happens because there are cycles of funding. So this is a very important thing to remember. Alright? Every NGO works hugely on capacity building because since they get people who don't know most of the things, they need to train them. So training assumes a far bigger role than in corporates. In corporates, it is not to create new knowledge, but to just update old knowledge in principle. In NGOs, you are creating new knowledge bases because they don't know. They have to be trained in that thing. So therefore, the budget of capacity building, the problem of capacity building is far bigger here than in a corporate. Okay? As we said here, sustainability is the acid test. Okay? So what does it depend on? Financially, creating a portfolio of donors. So we are back to the same story. Number of projects, portfolio of donors, portfolio of programs, and or a program of internal income generation. So something where you are dependent on nobody. So you can kind of make your own jam, your jelly, your pickles. You can sell it to people, like very commonly in exhibitions sponsored by the government. You make that little money. At least that money is yours. Everything else is donor dependent. Alright, so basically this is about, okay. Composition of an NGO board, usually will have a president, secretary, treasurer, typically 1 to 3 years. How do they resign? They die or whatever happens. Or they're not serving the interest of the NGO anymore, so then they're removed. Okay? So these are the characteristics of good and effective NGO boards. These are the board functions, funding decisions, sets policies in line with the agreed purposes, principles and scope of the NGO. So they are the people who defend the original charter. That's a very critical job in addition to this. Sets operational guidelines, work plans, budgets, etc. Okay. So that is what we talked about today. How do you manage an NGO organization? Alright, and with that we finally come to the close of my section of the course. Alright. Next class on 22nd, that's a long way off. The next class, we have many classes starting on 14th, I think. You will have the guest faculty who will take 4 classes in rapid succession. And then we meet for the quiz on 22nd. In the meanwhile, work on your NGO projects. Keep in touch with Ashima. Any issues, she will try and resolve for you. Okay? It's been great being with you. I hope you've enjoyed. If nothing else, you've met many kinds of organizations, many sectors, many ways of working. And particularly for you guys who've come from abroad, you've got a feel of the real India. This is something that people told you in the beginning. India is not here. India is not in Delhi, it's not in the Jaipur palaces, in the Taj Mahals, it is out there. So you probably got a feel of what this country is really all about from people who otherwise couldn't have made their presence felt to you. And for those of you who are here, I think it also gave you a feel. You are going to rise up and up the ladder into corporates. Make sure that you serve the underserved. If you don't, the society will reject you. Fine. Thank you very much.